Now that we're officially inside the national park, let's please stick to the reduced speed limit. One of the unique man-made things in this park is the Haleakala High Altitude Observatory site. The advantage of peering into the heavens with radio telescopes from the top of Haleakala is that at 10,000 feet, it sits above 1/3 of the Earth's atmosphere and above 90% of the Earth's water vapor. This means less interference by thick air, and therefore clearer signals. Haleakala was the first of Hawaii's high-altitude observatories. The other is on Mauna Kea on the Big Island. Haleakala's observatory was built first as it was considered easier to get to the top, and the very first observatory was constructed in 1964. Today, there are a collection of different observatories that are collectively known as Science City. The sister observatories on Mauna Kea are considered to have the absolute best conditions for ground-based astronomy anywhere in the world. The amount of interfering light pollution is even less than here, and the extra 3,800 feet of elevation makes conditions even clearer. If you're interested to take a look or perhaps a tour, I'm sorry, we won't be able to. The observatories are working institutions, and no public access is offered.
7,000 feet and 66 degrees.
You'll see the visitor center just ahead at the park headquarters. Unless we're desperately in need of a washroom, I suggest that we keep driving to the top.
You want to go?
At the top, there's another visitor center that has the same information and interesting books and souvenirs available. Also, there are washrooms at the top, too. We can stop here at this center on the way down if you like.
So those trucks that were behind us are redoing this road, evidently. What is it with the Mustang drivers feeling like they own the road?
Falling rocks next 4 miles. This says crossing, and it looks like birds or something. Got a brochure. Helicopter.
If it's a normal day on Haleakala, then we have most likely already driven through a layer of cloud, or we might be driving through one right now. If we haven't reached any bands of cloud yet, then somebody in this vehicle is the lucky charm, and you're definitely in the minority of visitors to Haleakala. But as I mentioned at the bottom, don't be discouraged if we're driving in thick clouds of fog and you can't see much right now. Things can change very quickly, and we might suddenly drive into a completely open view. Sometimes we'll drive in and out of clouds as we move from the east to the west side of the slope and back again. On many days, there will be multiple bands of clouds at different elevations. There might be one band at 7,000 feet, and then it might be clear before reaching another band at 8,500 feet. All of this is perfectly normal here on Haleakala. What we really want is for it to be clear at the top. Be patient when we get there. If the clouds are thick, go into the visitor center for a while and take a look at the interesting books and models and diagrams. Or talk to the staff there. They're normally very happy to answer any questions that you might have. Chances are the clouds, they'll blow away while we're there.
Probably. Clouds will disappear while we're there. This damn Danish. It was good. once you turn it off, you can't see anything because bushes or...
Before I get back to island geology, let me talk quickly about the hiking in the crater. While the views from the visitor center are spectacular, there's something even more special about actually hiking into the crater and seeing the cinder cones firsthand. Now, before I go on any further, I want you to know the volcano is dormant and has been for at least 200 years. There's no foreseeable danger to hiking in the crater. There are 3 degrees of difficulty that we can try. I'll start with the most difficult. For fit hikers, a really great trail to do is the one-way hike from the visitor center at the summit of the Haleakala trailhead just ahead. The hike is 11 miles long and is exhausting. It's a glorious hike between cinder cones and through lava fields and gives you a great tour of the crater. Most of the hike is downhill, but at the end of the hike, there's a 2-mile uphill trail to get out of the crater. That is a tough thing to do at the end of the day. This hike is a full-day commitment, and we shouldn't even think about attempting it unless you've adequately prepared. For something a little easier, a moderate hike that most reasonably fit people can do is the Sliding Sands Trail from the visitor center.
Elevation 8,000 feet, temperature 67. It actually went up 1 degree.
Back to the volcano lessons. Hawaii is not even close to being at the edge of the Pacific Plate. It's right in the middle. So how do we explain why we have volcanic activity here? Well, our next concept is the hotspot, or what's sometimes called a mantle plume. What this means is that there's a weakening or a thin part of the Earth's crust here. In this case, it's about 30,000 feet below the surface of Now and then in geological time, the magma finds new cracks or roots to get to the surface of the crust. Then we have a volcano. Now remember how we talked about how the North American tectonic plate is moving? Well, the hotspot itself doesn't move. The plate moves over the top of this hotspot. As it moves, the hotspot finds new openings or weak spots in the crust it can break through, and that opens up a new eruption site. If we were to draw a line through the major Hawaiian Islands, we see that the line points to the northwest, towards Japan, just like the direction the plate is moving. Kauai is the oldest island, then Oahu, then Maui, and finally the big island of Hawaii, which is the youngest and, as we know, still actively building. As the Pacific Plate drifts, it carries the islands along on top. Over millions of years, each massive volcano drifts northward, and it gets further away from the hotspot that created it. Magma can no longer find its way to that volcano, and it becomes extinct. New cracks passing over the hotspot allow magma to find a route to the surface, usually to the southeast of an older, now dormant volcano. Just remember that all of this happens in incredibly slow motion.
There's a
The
car
deep channels
way up
between the
there.
islands also prove that sometimes there might be periods of hundreds of thousands of years where no volcanic activity is actually happening above the surface of the ocean. I'm going to talk about the specifics of Haleakala and Maui up ahead. But first, let's quickly talk about Hawaii's youngest island, the Big Island of Hawaii. The reason that I want to talk about the Big Island is that it actually is the newest of the Hawaiian Islands and is still alive in geological terms. And by that, I mean that the Big Island is still growing, getting bigger through volcanic activity. Mauna Loa is the Big Island's largest volcano and is a shield volcano. If you consider its size from the ocean floor to its peak, 13,800 feet above sea level, it is actually the world's biggest mountain at about 33,000 feet from top to bottom, but nearly 20,000 of it is below the ocean surface. Mount Everest reaches 29,029 feet at its peak, all above ground. All of the Hawaiian Islands are derived from shield volcanoes.
Well,
In
it's
fact,
better than the
5
Nissan,
different volcanoes
so.
have contributed to building the Big Island landmass at different times. As each new volcano began creating rock, the new rock would spread over the top of older volcanic rock, causing it to grow too, but not from its own internal activity. Now, if we remember about the plate moving northwest, it makes sense that the closest part of the Big Island to Maui, called Kohala, is the oldest part of the island. In fact, Kohala is now considered dormant. But as we move to the southeast, across to the opposite end of the Big Island, we move to the youngest part of the island, Kilauea, which is still actively spewing lava and occasionally exploding vents. And if we go even further to the southeast, into the ocean, remember that's the opposite to the direction to the plate movement. It's like moving to a younger or newer time. There's an active undersea volcano called Loihi, about 20 miles off the coast of the Big Island. The top of Loihi is still about 3,000 feet below the water surface. It's expected to break the surface and become another Hawaiian island in about 50,000 years. Yeah, you thought you might still be around, didn't you? It's more likely that Kilauea, the current active volcano, will be much bigger by then, and it'll join Loihi, so Loihi will then be the 6th volcano on the Big Island, rather than being its own island. It all makes good sense if you keep thinking about everything moving toward the northwest and passing over one hotspot that's causing all of this eruption activity. pretty good idea about how the chain of islands was, and still is, being formed. Maui is the second youngest of the islands.
9,000
The Big Island
feet.
is the newest. From what we now
9,000
know,
feet.
it shouldn't be surprising for me to tell you that
64
Maui
degrees.
was formed by two volcanoes. The first was
Scoot over, buddy.
Pu'ukui, which is at the northwest end of the island. That's the one with the wind farm on it. The second is here at the southeast end of the island, and it's called, of course, Haleakala. Haleakala is huge, like Mauna Kea on the Big Island.
Whoa, move over
From its
that
true
way.
base at the ocean floor, Haleakala is 30,000 feet from bottom to top. At its tallest, Haleakala reached an altitude of 12,000 feet above sea level. Now, it's just a touch over 10,000. So why is it 2,000 feet shorter today? Well, one reason is that the ocean floor actually bends down a little under the tremendous weight of all this new rock above it. Also, it would be reasonable to think that with lava pouring out the top of the volcano, it should have an ice-shaped peak. What can happen is that beneath the peak, a pool of lava can break out and flow out from the side of the new mountain. This causes the top to collapse down on itself, and that's what was likely one of the several events that happened at the top of Haleakala. When we see the small cinder cones inside what's called the crater, these are examples of small, younger vents that formed very late in the volcano's active life.
No left
But the
turn.
biggest force that is reducing the height of
Really?
Haleakala is erosion. New volcanic rock is relatively soft, and it gets worn down by wind and water.
Still find it hard to believe that lava does
Remember a
this.
few minutes ago I said that Maui and the Big Island, and the other Hawaiian islands for that matter, were formed by the growing of shield volcanoes. This means that the volcanoes grew up quite slowly through long but not necessarily violent eruptions. More like a slow ooze of magma. As more magma rises out of the volcano, it spreads all
gotten
around,
cool,
slowly
I can
getting
feel it with
taller
my
and
own
taller,
hands.
but also wider and wider. This is where the idea of them being shaped like a shield comes from, as opposed to a tall, steep mountain. The other type of volcano, and the one that usually gets portrayed in movies, is a composite volcano. Composites are characterized by violent explosions, usually caused by gases building up pressure beneath thick, stickier magma. Our shield volcanoes here in Hawaii don't seem to have experienced the same pressurization, and so they don't explode like, say, Mount St. Helens in Washington or Krakatoa did, for example.
I can feel it getting cool.
64 degrees.
Those silver bushes that we see growing between the rocks are called silver swords. I'm going to talk more about them when we drive down. At the summit lookout, we can always see some nice examples of this unique plant up close.
Is he...
Be careful not to step off the pathways around them. They have very delicate root systems and can be easily damaged just by footsteps. Please keep to the designated trails.
It's all about me. All about me.
Yes, she was hanging out the window with the camera.
Hey, stop here. I want to take a picture.
We're nearly at the visitor center at an elevation of 9,740 feet. So, how cold is it up here today? When we arrive, stay left for the parking area. Find a parking space and we can go inside and take a look at the view and see the visual displays about the volcano and national park. There are public washrooms available here at the visitor center. If you do want to take a hike into the crater, long or short, information on trails is available inside. If you already have a trail map and want to start the Sliding Sands Trail, then we'll see the trailhead off to the right around the rock mound next to the car park. After we leave the center, keep driving further to the summit for the Pu'u'ula lookout at 10,023 feet. And please remember, Ikahele aku eheoma amau ikawa, which means when you leave, return it as you found it. It's just a couple of seconds to the Pu'u'ula lookout. You'll see the road that goes left to the observatories. Please do not turn onto that road as there's no public access. At the lookout, they have some excellent displays that help explain the unique geology of Haleakala and the Hawaiian Islands. Let's jump out and go take a look. We'll be over 10,000 feet, and you'll probably find yourself a little short of breath just doing simple things like climbing the short set of stairs. This mound of rocks on our left is called Magnetic Peak. It's a cinder cone, and it's so high in iron content that it can alter the way a compass points. We get a clue about the iron content by the red color of the rock. Pu'u'ula, where the overlook sits on, is also a cinder cone, and it's the highest elevation we can get to on Haleakala.
Oh, that was the observatory, okay.
Yes. Yep. It says summit this way.
There. Wow, the summit looks like it's above the observatory.
Yep. And it's said all along the way, do not leave anything in your possession in the car. Keep right.
There's plenty of parking.
Yep. But I'd find one soon.